All right. So tell me a little bit about yourself. What are your interests? What college did you go to? What are you currently working on?
Sure. So I went to three universities. The first one was the University of Montana, where I got a degree in elementary education. The second one was out in Cambridge, Massachusetts, near Harvard, and that was Lesley University, and I got a master's degree in computer education and its use in schools. And then my third or second master's degree, but third degree was more physics. It's a Master of Science Education from Montana State University. And it's kind of a specialty in physics and geology and astronomy. And this will be my 37th year of teaching. So I've taught everything from kindergarten through 8th grade. I work with a lot of high school students in aerospace education and pilot training, and I'm Lieutenant Colonel in the Air Force, in the Civil Air Patrol, and hold a position of Director of STEM curriculum and kind of organize gliding events for Civil Air Patrol at the National Headquarters. And I teach math, science, and engineering, and pretty much always have.
That's really cool. Why did you decide to become a space educator?
Well, good. That's a good question. I went to Florida for the first time, well, to Kennedy Space Center for the first time when I was kind of new to teaching. And I was there for a technology conference, and my friend suggested we go to the Kennedy Space Center, so we did, and I just loved it, everything about it. I came home and went to the mall to get my pictures developed, and there was this long line of students waiting for something. And I thought, I wonder what is keeping those junior high kids' attention so long. So I went over there, jumped in line, and it was a trip to space camp. So I said, well, can anybody enter this? And they said, yeah, anybody can. So I jumped in line, I filled out the form and got my pictures, went home. The phone rang and I won. I won a trip to space camp. And so I went to Huntsville, Alabama. I did a week-long space camp. And then I just decided right then and there I was going to become a pilot. And I really wanted to pursue becoming an astronaut. So I came home and developed a space camp at the YMCA, which I have done for about 20 years. And also just a space curriculum within my school. And then a couple of years after that, I won another trip to space camp. Only this time it was a more advanced camp. And that was just more training and more ways to kind of get the kids here in Montana involved in space, because we don't live close to Kennedy Space Center, and I really wanted to do that. It was becoming my passion. And then in 2003, I became the National Teacher of the Year in Aerospace Education, and Scott Crossfield, who is considered to be the very first astronaut in his X-15, awarded me his Teacher of the Year award in Ohio. And then after that, I joined the Civil Air Patrol. I just started flying more, and one thing led to another. And I wasn't seeking awards, but it's just something that, when you're so passionate about, things just happen for you. And I love flying. I love teaching about space. And then I met Mr. Frank Hughes somewhere along the line, and I had attended all kinds of kind of like what you did this summer, only for teachers in Houston. So I went to about 3 or 4 of those opportunities with teachers called Liftoff, and Mrs. Baggio was the head of that, and ended up becoming one of her instructors for teachers that came to NASA and learned about space. And I continued to stay in touch with Frank, And I told him, I said, there's no teachers in Montana that have ever been selected to fly in microgravity. And the year I applied, he made sure that happened. And so I was selected to fly in microgravity with my team and another team from Montana. And we, in 2011, went down to Ellington Field in Houston, and we got to put our physics experiment to use in microgravity. And then after that is just, teaching as usual and sharing all these opportunities that I've had with people like you in hopes that you will, one day be inspired enough to pursue something like that too. Not everybody has to be an astronaut, but there's a lot of jobs that are needed in NASA, like engineers or scientists, people that have good leadership skills. So that's kind of it. And now I have retired from teaching in Montana, and I got a phone call from the school in Florida for me to come out there and teach. I didn't apply for it. They asked me to come out, and I came down, looked at their school, and it's amazing. And I said, how could I not? And plus, I get to be next to Kennedy Space Center, and what better ending to my career is that? So I will continue to teach, as long as I can, and work with kids in the NASA Seas internship program, and continue to do whatever I do for Civil Air Patrol, and above all else, continue to fly.
So, what does your general day-to-day look like in non-quarantine times?
My general day at school, or just at work, you mean, or just anytime?
At work.
Well, because in Montana, I'm not in quarantine. So it's a little bit different than Florida. I can do whatever I want to here. Any public place, we're wearing masks. But going back to work now, it's going to be different. And then we have 2 hurricanes coming too, on top of that. So I will wear a mask. I'm going to wear scrubs. I'm going to have plexiglass in front of me. So are the kids. I will maybe try to do a flipped classroom where I provide lecture video clips for kids to watch ahead of time, and then they will come to school and then we'll go over homework. So I'll be teaching some math, so we'll do some lectures that they watch on their own at home. So they're not getting so much screen time all the time. I know you probably can relate to that. Sitting at the computer all day long is a long time. And if I can alleviate some of that for the kids, I think that would be great. So they can go on, watch their math lesson, then plug into me. We can do breakout rooms, do a little one-on-one, and we're going to make it work. Science, that's going to be challenging to teach chemistry and physics through Zoom, because labs are really important. And that's how you teach science, is by giving your students the experiences of some of those labs, and for them to find out things on their own, not for me to just demonstrate and show you, but you experience it for yourself. So I'm going to, create demos, but I'm also going to create science kits where they'll have to come to the school, pick up their science kits for each lab, and then take it home. And we'll have to do that either at home, or we can do some of this at school behind their plexiglass, but it's going to be different because there'll be no lab partners. They can't share supplies. And it's going to be like being a new teacher all over again for me too. So I hope my students have a lot of patience because I'm going to be learning how to do this right too, and hopefully they'll love school and love science and math. And this isn't going to be, this is just a temporary situation we're going to be in. And once there's a virus and we get through this, we'll remember, do you remember when we were during that pandemic, how we had to go to school? So I'm hoping this will be very short-lived, but I think it's going to be all year. Um, but we'll see.
So what would you say is the most challenging part of being a space educator?
Oh, um, is there a challenge? I think everything's great. I don't know. I think funding is always a challenge with NASA, and finding ways to fund projects. I think when the space shuttle program ended, people thought NASA ended, and it really didn't. It's still going strong, and I think the challenge is to make people realize that we are going back to the moon and to Mars and beyond, and the program is still very much up and running. And it just happens to be, that SpaceX is part of that now. And I think that's really exciting that we can use outside companies and corporations to promote what we're trying to do.
Similar to the last question, but what would you say is the most rewarding part of being a space educator?
Well, I am all for future. I just think in the future, and I'm such an explorer. And I used to teach about Lewis and Clark, and being here in Montana, and I love that kind of um, education where you're exploring, and I think that's our destiny, is to explore and to constantly ask questions and find out, what's out there. And I think that's exciting to me, especially when we're finding new planets and sometimes science isn't what we thought it was a long time ago. When I was your age, we had 8, 9 planets. Pluto was still a planet, and now look at we have 600 whatever planets. Never dreamed that we would ever discover that, but we have, and that's what's exciting, is all the new discoveries, and that's science.
What is one piece of advice you would give to students hoping to become space educators themselves one day?
Oh, my favorite question is never ever stop learning. Just always be excited about what you're learning. Read as much as you can. Do as the best you can in school, for sure. Take all the math you can. Sometimes classes are hard. Sometimes they're challenging, and they should be. That's good. That's how you learn. But don't ever shy away from something that's hard. And sometimes, if you have a lot of perseverance, I don't know if you know the Columbia crew, but David and Casey flew into Missoula, Montana, right before one of the Columbia launched, actually, on their T-38. And I was out flying that day, and I met them. And I said, I just got back from Texas, and so excited to, become an astronaut one day. And the advice that Casey gave me is that it takes a lot of perseverance. And if you have a dream, and if you want to do something badly enough, you just have to have that perseverance that someday it will happen. I may never be an astronaut, but what I've gotten to do because of that pursuit is I got to fly in microgravity. I became a pilot. I became a national aerospace education teacher, and I get to teach kids about some of the things that I've learned along the way and share that with you. So the best thing is to never stop learning and to persevere. Don't give up. Never give up.
All right, so last question on recording. What is one thing that you would tell aspiring space educators to do today? It can be anything from a book suggestion to talking to 5 friends about space.
There's so many resources that NASA has available to educators. Liftoff is one of them. It's one of the best teacher workshop you could ever imagine. It's kind of like your C's, opportunity for teachers. So, apply to go to Liftoff, go to the NASA websites. There's all kinds of curriculum that they could go to and use in their classrooms that's ready to go. There's also opportunities to link up with an astronaut to come into your, through Zoom or in person to visit your class. One of the neatest things that I've ever done is I organized a link up to the International Space Station with my school, where I got the ham radio organization in my town to practice linking up with the ISS. And then as they flew over our school, we linked up and we had 25 students selected to actually ask questions. And a lot of my students have never experienced what I did with the first astronauts walking on the moon. And for them to talk to astronauts in the ISS in their school was kind of like what it was for me when astronauts made it to the moon. So there's going to be more and more, exciting things ahead for your age group, and you may be one of those students that ends up on the moon or Mars, and I will be watching you one day. Look at her, she's up there, so proud of her. I guess there's just, I think you have to be excited about what you're teaching yourself, and what better way to, um, teach math and science than through space and exploration and through everything that NASA has to offer. This is what they do. This is what they're the best at, is education of space. And if you learn some math and science along the way, that's even better. But they do a fantastic job with that kind of curriculum.
Well, thank you for the interview.
You're welcome.